The autumn of 1883 brought more than just changing leaves to the Montana territory. It brought misunderstandings, broken promises, and an unexpected chance at love for two people who never planned to meet, but would discover that fate's accidents often create the most beautiful destinies. Catherine Kate Sullivan stepped off the afternoon train in Silver Falls with her heart pounding and her hands shaking with nervous anticipation. After 3 months of correspondence with rancher William Morrison through a mail-order bride agency, she had traveled from Boston to Montana with all her worldly possessions in 2 small bags, and dreams of building a new life with the man whose letters had promised partnership, respect, and a fresh start far from the scandal that had ruined her reputation back east. But as the platform cleared and passengers reunited with waiting families, Kate stood alone with growing dread. William Morrison was supposed to meet her at 2 o'clock. It was now nearly 3, and the station was emptying except for a few lingering travelers and one weathered cowboy who seemed to be waiting for someone who hadn't arrived either. Kate tried to maintain her composure, telling herself there must be a reasonable explanation. Perhaps William had been delayed by ranch emergencies, or perhaps she'd gotten the date wrong in her nervousness. But as minutes stretched into an hour and the afternoon sun began its descent toward the mountains, Kate's composure crumbled into tears she couldn't control. She sank onto a wooden bench, clutching her travel bags and crying with the desperate hopelessness of someone who had risked everything on one chance and watched it disappear like smoke. She had no money for return passage, no family who would take her back after the scandal, no prospects except whatever charity the town might offer before sending her on her way. That's when the weathered cowboy approached, his hat in his hands and concern written across his sun-darkened features. "Ma'am," he said gently, his voice carrying the slow drawl of someone who chose words carefully. "I don't mean to intrude on your private grief, but I've been watching you wait for over an hour now. Is there someone I can fetch for you? Someone who might help?" Kate looked up at him through her tears, seeing a man probably in his mid-30s with wind-burned skin, kind gray eyes, and the solid build of someone who worked hard for his living. He wasn't handsome in a conventional sense, but there was something decent in his face that made her want to trust him despite her current circumstances. "I'm waiting for William Morrison," Kate said, her voice breaking on the name. "I'm his mail-order bride, supposed to meet him here at 2 o'clock, but he hasn't come, and I don't know what to do." The cowboy's expression shifted from concern to recognition to something darker, anger mixed with resignation. "Ma'am, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but William Morrison got married 3 weeks ago, to the banker's daughter. I was at the wedding myself." Kate felt the words hit her like physical blows. "But we've been corresponding for months. He sent his last letter just 6 weeks ago, confirming our arrangement and giving me this date and time to arrive. How could he be married to someone else? And that's when you realize this isn't just about a broken promise. It's about 2 people finding each other when everything else falls apart, which is exactly why you should hit that subscribe button right now, because watching how this abandoned bride and protective cowboy build something beautiful from this disaster will restore your faith in unexpected blessings." The cowboy's jaw tightened with anger at Morrison's deception. "Morrison's been courting the banker's daughter for near about 4 months now. I reckon he forgot to tell you he'd changed his plans, or maybe he figured you'd never actually come this far. Either way, leaving you stranded here is a coward's trick, and I apologize on behalf of decent men everywhere." He paused, studying Kate's tear-stained face with a mixture of sympathy and calculation. "My name's Jack Thornton. I run a small horse ranch about 10 miles west of here. I came to town to pick up supplies and meet a horse trader who apparently missed his train. I wasn't planning to take on a wife today, but I also can't leave a woman stranded with no resources and nowhere to go." Kate stared at him, trying to process what he seemed to be suggesting. "Mr. Thornton, I don't understand." "I'm saying I'll take you to my ranch," Jack interrupted gently. "Not as my wife, not yet, but as my guest until we figure out what comes next. You can help with household work in exchange for room and board, And if after a few weeks we both decide we suit each other, maybe we can make it permanent. And if we don't suit, I'll pay your passage to wherever you want to go. But either way, you're not sleeping on a train station bench tonight. But you haven't seen the most important part yet. Kate studied Jack's weathered face, seeing sincerity in his gray eyes that made her want to believe this unexpected offer was genuine rather than a trap. Why would you help a complete stranger? You don't know anything about me, except that I'm desperate enough to travel across the country to marry a man I've never met. Jack's smile was sad but kind. Because I know what it's like to need help and have no one offer it. And because leaving you here when I have the means to help would make me no better than Morrison for breaking his promise. He picked up her bags before she could protest. My wagon's loaded and ready to go. The ride's about 2 hours, and we'll reach the ranch before dark. I've got a spare bedroom that's clean and private, a housekeeper who comes 3 days a week, and 5 ranch hands who know better than to bother a woman under my protection. You'll be safe, Kate. You have my word as a man who actually keeps his promises. Kate made a decision based more on instinct than logic, standing up and following this stranger toward his wagon, because something in his eyes told her he was exactly what he claimed to be, a decent man offering help when help was desperately needed. The ride to Jack's ranch revealed more about his character than a dozen letters could have conveyed. He talked easily about his life, explaining that he'd inherited the ranch from his father 5 years ago and had been running it alone since his mother died 3 years back. He bred and trained horses, sold them to ranchers and cavalry alike, and had built a modest but successful operation through hard work and honest dealing. I thought about using one of those bride agencies myself, Jack admitted as they traveled through the golden autumn landscape. But I kept putting it off because writing letters never felt right. Felt like shopping for cattle instead of finding a partner. Figured if God meant for me to find a wife, it would happen naturally. He glanced at Kate with a slight smile. Guess this is about as natural as it gets. Finding someone at a train station who needs help and happens to be exactly the kind of person you've been hoping to meet. Kate felt her first genuine smile since the train arrived. Mr. Thornton, I don't mean to be forward, but you know nothing about me except that I'm a failed mail-order bride. Don't you want to know why I left Boston or what scandal drove me to seek a husband through an agency? Jack was quiet for a moment, guiding the horses around a rocky section of trail. I figure you'll tell me when you're ready, or you won't, and that's fine too. We all have pasts we'd rather leave behind. What matters is who you choose to be going forward. Wait, don't miss what happens next. The ranch that came into view as the sun touched the mountains was modest but well-maintained, with a sturdy house, neat corrals full of beautiful horses, and an overall atmosphere of care and order. Jack helped Kate down from the wagon with the same respectful courtesy he'd shown at the train station, introducing her to his housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, a capable Chinese woman in her 50s who asked no questions but made Kate feel immediately welcome. The spare bedroom was small but comfortable, with a real bed, clean linens, and a window overlooking the horse corrals. After 3 days of train travel, it felt like luxury beyond measure. But more than the physical comfort, Kate felt safe for the first time since leaving Boston, safe in a way she hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Over the following days, Kate settled into ranch life with surprising ease. She helped Mrs. Chen with cooking and housework, learning the rhythms of frontier living that were completely different from her Boston upbringing. She discovered she had a natural affinity for horses, spending hours at the corrals watching Jack train young animals with patient gentleness that impressed her more than any number of eloquent letters could have done. "You're good with them," Kate observed one afternoon, watching Jack work with a skittish mare that had been abused by previous owners. Patient and kind even when they're difficult. Jack looked up with that slight smile she was learning to recognize. Horses and people aren't so different. They both respond better to patience than to force, and they both know when someone genuinely cares about their well-being versus just wanting to use them. The observation felt weighted with meaning that went beyond horse training, and Kate found herself studying this man who had rescued her without expectation of anything in return. He was nothing like William Morrison's letters had described, no flowery prose or grand romantic gestures. But his actions spoke louder than any words, and Kate was beginning to realize that she'd been incredibly lucky that Morrison had broken his promise. What you're seeing now is nothing compared to what comes next. The evening that changed everything came 2 weeks after Kate's arrival, when she and Jack sat on the porch watching sunset paint the mountains in impossible colors. They had fallen into the comfortable habit of these evening talks, sharing stories about their pasts and their hopes for the future with increasing honesty. "I should tell you why I left Boston," Kate said quietly, breaking the companionable silence. "Why I was desperate enough to answer a mail-order bride advertisement." Jack turned to look at her, his expression encouraging but not demanding. "Only if you want to tell me." Kate took a deep breath, deciding that this man deserved honesty after the kindness he'd shown. "I was engaged to a merchant's son, a very respectable match that my father arranged. 3 months before the wedding, I discovered that my fiancé was already married to a woman in New York, and our engagement was bigamous. When I confronted him and tried to break the engagement, he spread rumors that I had been unfaithful to him, that I was damaged goods, that no respectable man would want me." She felt tears prick her eyes at the memory of how quickly her entire social circle had turned against her. "My father believed the rumors over my truth. He said I must have done something to drive my fiancé to such lies. The scandal made me unmarriageable in Boston society, so I answered the bride agency advertisement because it seemed like my only chance at a fresh start with someone who wouldn't judge me based on lies." Jack was quiet for a long moment, his weathered hands clenched into fists. "Your fiancé was a coward and a liar, and your father was a fool for believing him over his own daughter. None of what happened was your fault, Kate. You did nothing wrong except trust people who didn't deserve your trust." Kate looked at him through her tears, seeing genuine anger on her behalf and something else, a protectiveness that made her heart beat faster. "Thank you for saying that. Thank you for not assuming the rumors must have some truth to them." "Kate," Jack said, turning to face her fully, "I've watched you for 2 weeks now. I've seen how you treat Mrs. Chen with respect, how you're patient with the horses, how you work hard without complaint. I don't need to know your past to know your character. Whatever scandal you left behind in Boston doesn't define who you are." He reached out and took her hand gently, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "I brought you here as a guest with no expectations. But these past weeks, I've come to realize that maybe Morrison breaking his promise was the best thing that could have happened to either of us. Because I'm falling in love with you, Kate Sullivan. Not with some fantasy from letters, but with the real woman who showed up at that train station crying and still had the courage to trust a stranger offering help." Kate felt her breath catch in her throat at his confession. "Jack, I came here expecting to marry a man I'd never met because I thought that was my only option. But you've shown me what real kindness looks like, what respect feels like, what it means to be valued for who I am rather than what scandal defines me. I'm falling in love with you too, with your patience, your integrity, your gentleness, with everything you touch." Their first kiss was tender and tentative, two people who had found each other through accident rather than design, discovering that sometimes the best love stories are the ones that begin when all your plans fall apart. The proposal came naturally a month later, during the first snow of winter when the ranch transformed into a white wonderland. Jack had been building Kate a hope chest, beautiful craftsmanship that showed both his skill and his intention. When he presented it to her filled with quilts and linens he'd commissioned from town, Kate understood what he was asking. "Kate Sullivan," Jack said, taking her hands in his, "I never planned to find my wife at a train station, crying over someone else's broken promise. But I thank God every day that Morrison was fool enough to let you go, because his loss became my greatest blessing. You've made this house a home, you've made me laugh again, and you've shown me that love doesn't need perfect circumstances. It just needs honest hearts willing to choose each other." He pulled out a simple gold ring that had belonged to his mother. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend my life proving that some men actually keep their promises? Will you help me build a family and a life worth living?" Kate threw her arms around his neck, tears streaming down her face. But these were tears of joy rather than despair. Yes, Jack Thornton. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll build a life with you. And yes, I'll thank God every day that William Morrison broke his promise, because it led me to you. The wedding took place in Silver Falls' small church on a winter morning, with Mrs. Chen and the ranch hands serving as witnesses. When the preacher asked if Kate took Jack as her husband, her voice rang clear and strong. I do, gladly and freely. I choose this man who chose me when I had nothing to offer but hope and gratitude. I choose this life we're building together from the ashes of broken promises and shattered plans. Jack's vows were simple but profound. Kate, you came to Montana expecting to marry a man who didn't have the decency to keep his word. Instead, you got me. A simple horse rancher with calloused hands and a heart that was lonely until you filled it. I promise to honor you, respect you, and prove every day that you made the right choice, trusting a stranger at a train station. Years passed, and the Thornton Ranch flourished under their joint management. Kate discovered she had a gift for horse breeding and training, working alongside Jack to build a reputation for quality that attracted buyers from across the territory. They raised 4 children who grew up understanding that the best things in life often come from unexpected places, and that broken promises sometimes lead to better blessings. On their 20th anniversary, as they watched their children working with the horses, Kate reflected on the day she'd sat crying on that train station bench. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Morrison had actually shown up that day? Jack pulled her close, this woman who had transformed his lonely house into a home full of love and laughter. I try not to think about it, because imagining you married to that coward makes me want to track him down and explain what happens to men who don't keep their promises. But mostly, I just thank God that his broken promise led you to me. Best worst day of my life, Kate said, kissing him while their children pretended not to notice. Worst, because I thought my life was over. Best, because it was actually just beginning. Second best day? Jack asked with a smile. Every day since then, Kate replied. Every single day I've gotten to spend with the man who rescued me from a train station and gave me the life I'd stopped dreaming was possible. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that broken promises sometimes lead to better blessings, and that the best love stories often begin when all your plans fall apart, then you've found your home. Subscribe to Wild West Romance Stories for more tales of unexpected meetings, protective heroes, and love that grows from the courage to trust again when trust has been broken. From train station benches to family homesteads, every story we tell proves that fate's accidents often create the most beautiful destinies. This is where abandoned brides find true love, where broken promises lead to kept ones, and where the greatest blessings come wrapped in the most unexpected packages.